it's Aleaha with eXp Realty, and today we're going to follow up the All About Fort McMurray video with how expensive is it to live in Fort McMurray video. So sit back and take a listen as I break down some of your basic costs of living in Fort McMurray, Alberta. Okay, so we're broken up here into a couple of sections that I'll try and fly through pretty quickly. And of course, with the caveat that every one of these does have wiggle room. For example, many costs are fluid, such as transportation, groceries, utilities, really depending on what you consume and how much you consume it. But let's start off with my favorite, and some might say my specialty, is housing. So I'd like to talk about rent and buying. Now, when I was doing this comparison, what I wanted to do was just use the closest city to us, which just happens to be Edmonton. So what I did was I literally went online and I went on Kijiji and I went on realtor.ca and I pulled up some rental properties as well as some properties for purchase, and then I pulled the exact same information in Edmonton. Now what I found is there is a slight cost difference. So for example, let's talk about rent first. Most people are going to move up here and they're going to rent before they make the decision to purchase. So I started right at the bottom, and a basement suite, a nice 2-bedroom basement suite in Fort McMurray tends to be a popular option. And Kijiji told me, which I will post a photo here, that option runs you around $1,100. So between $1,000 and $1,100, depending just exactly what part of town you were in. And if you wanted to, in fact, rent a whole entire house, that is definitely costing more like $3,000. I found one for $2,950, I believe. That was a 4-bedroom property. And if you wanted something smaller than a house, but a step up from a basement suite, well, of course, there's condos or apartments. Your average 2-bedroom apartment, 2-bedroom condos running around $1,300 to $1,500. So just as a recap, in Fort McMurray, in our rental market, literally as of yesterday, when I Googled this information, on Kijiji I found a basement suite for $1,000. I found a 2-bedroom condo for $1,350. And then I found an entire home for rent for $2,950, so around $3,000. Comparing those exact properties to Edmonton. Now in Edmonton, I didn't look at a basement suite, but when I compared a 4-bedroom home in Edmonton to a 4-bedroom home in McMurray, now the one I found in Edmonton was a duplex style home. I don't know if that would make a big difference. They looked to be similar. The home in Edmonton was $2,150, while the home in McMurray was $2,950. And now the apartments, those were kind of similar, to be honest. The apartments were a 2-bedroom apartment. So a 1-bedroom was $1,100, a 2-bedroom was $1,400, which did sort of compare to our 2-bedroom condo in Fort McMurray, which was around that $1,350, $1,400. So all in all, your basic rental, condo, apartment, probably basement suite, does seem to be similar Fort McMurray to Edmonton. The biggest difference, of course, is renting an entire home. It is more expensive in Fort McMurray to rent an entire home. That's the first thing we found out. Okay, so let's compare some of the properties that you would purchase in Fort McMurray to Edmonton. Now this is again from a very high level view. There will be lots of differences depending on area, depending on exact square footage, quality of build. But for the purpose of this video, I tried to closely do apples to apples. So what do we have? What I found in Fort McMurray was your average 2-bedroom condo is running you around $150,000. When I looked in Edmonton, it was very easy to see a fluctuation. You could go as low as $100,000, but it looked like the average 2-bedroom condo in a decent neighborhood was about $200,000. So not too different. $150,000 in Fort McMurray would get you a nice downtown condo. There are some located in the Eagle Ridge neighborhood that are definitely more like $200,000, probably a slightly better location. So I found 2-bedroom condos, very comparable. The next one we looked at were 3-bedroom townhomes. Now this is where I did see a bit of a bigger jump from Edmonton to Fort McMurray. So Edmonton, it looks like you can get a 3-bedroom townhome for more like in the $250 range. Again, I'll share some photos of things that I found. And in Fort McMurray, our jump from condos to townhomes are a little bit of a bigger difference. I think our condo market was hit pretty bad in the last few years, so condos have definitely lost a significant amount of value and are fairly inexpensive at the moment. Townhouses are still selling for anywhere between $250 to $350. The one I pulled here is listed at $319, and that seems to be a very lovely condo. A comparable one in Edmonton, again, more like $250 to $275. Now, our single family homes, there's a very wide range, so I really did try to pick a nice generic cookie cutter family home. So in Fort McMurray, there's a 5-bedroom detached home, a double attached garage listed for $589. A very similar looking home in a very similar neighborhood in Edmonton, double attached garage, 2-story. This one actually is also a 5-bedroom home. I just had to double check. It's listed at $575. So quite comparable in my mind. This is a neighborhood in the Northwest. I believe, I used to live in Edmonton, I believe the neighborhoods are comparable. So in summary, for the housing end of this, what I really found was the greatest discrepancy was in the housing rental market. So purchasing, I think you could purchase a very comparable quality in Fort McMurray to a city like Edmonton or even Calgary for very similar value. I think the biggest discrepancy in my research was rentals. Rentals in Fort McMurray are more expensive. That could be because they're in higher demand. So maybe you should buy, not rent. Now, the next point that I wanted to chat about was food prices. I do hear often that people think groceries in Fort McMurray are significantly more expensive than in other cities. But according to my very scientific research, I actually didn't find that. So what I did this morning was I went on to superstore.ca. That is where I shop for my family of 7. And I just picked like a nice basic list of about 10 things, which I'll read to you. And I'll show you the screenshot here, actually, somewhere up here. Now, what I put in my cart was, I'm gonna read it so I get it right. Eggs, milk, bread, bacon, bananas, apples, toothpaste, ground beef, tomato sauce, toilet paper. The bare bone basics. I did that grocery shop in Fort McMurray at the Superstore downtown today. It cost $54. I did the exact same shop at the exact same Superstore, all the same items, cost $53. Samesies, but groceries can vary depending on where exactly you shop, what exactly you purchase. Of course, like I said, for housing, it's also very high level. You could be buying all no-name stuff, you could be buying all brand name stuff. But I did want to share that the basics in groceries did not seem to have a difference whatsoever. One of the other areas I wanted to talk about was transportation. So Fort McMurray does have a good busing system. It's not as great as we see in larger cities, but it is available. So the one thing I did notice was the bus in Fort McMurray, the public transportation, is cheaper than in Edmonton. We did make our kids take the bus in Edmonton this summer, which was really scary for me, but anyway. So the average price, I'm going to read it off of online here, because the average price for a one-way ticket is $1.50 with a monthly pass starting at $48. That's in Fort McMurray. Now, when the children went to Edmonton, the bus was more expensive. It was actually $3.50 a person, not the $1.50 here in Fort McMurray. And a monthly bus pass was, I'm going to read it online here, $73. And in Fort McMurray, it's $48. So that is something that's cheaper. Public transportation does seem to be less expensive in Fort McMurray. But I will point out that when I Googled the cost of gas, most people, I would say, drive in Fort McMurray. Many do take transit, lots of teenagers, but a lot of people do drive. So the cost of gas is oddly different. So I just Googled it the other day, and the cost of gas in Fort McMurray at that time was $1.69. It's come down actually a little bit today. But the same gas at the same gas station when I Googled was $1.43. So that is something I always notice when we travel down south to Edmonton. Gas always seems to be cheaper. So that's kind of a bummer, but there is a big difference. If you really wanted to get into the nitty-gritty of things, there's a few websites that I looked up online that go into really great details about restaurants eating out, like how much is it for 2 beers here versus there, entertainment costs, childcare costs, healthcare costs. There's a lot of things to factor into your budget if you're thinking of changing cities. Overall though, I do think Fort McMurray's costs are higher than other cities of their same size. For example, Grand Prairie, Red Deer. In my research, I did find it would be more expensive to live in Fort McMurray in a similar location with a similar lifestyle than it would say in Grand Prairie. Now, the one thing I wanted to end this little video with, so it's not too depressing, is that the average salary in Fort McMurray is higher than pretty much anywhere else in Alberta. For example, when I just Googled, our good old friend Google, average salary of your average worker in Fort McMurray, it was just over $60,000. The same position, the same job in Edmonton was $53,000. So that's a bit of a difference. So when you dive into the population of Fort McMurray, most of the population of Fort McMurray on average net quite a bit more than just your average salary. So for example, on this one website I looked at, it says that the highest, or the city of Fort McMurray has one of the average highest salaries in Canada, and they quoted the average salary at more like $70,000. So that is a little bit of a difference from $53,000 to $70,000. And there are higher paying jobs in Fort McMurray depending on what your field is. For example, there's engineers, there's many positions on site, from engineers, human resource managers, safety people, electricians, welders, pipe fitters. The jobs out here in Fort McMurray really do pay more than you would find a similar job down in another city in Alberta, Edmonton, Calgary, for example. They are. So in summary, while there are higher costs to Fort McMurray, what we found here is there are higher costs to rent, there are higher gas prices, we do have higher salaries as well. So overall, I do not think that Fort McMurray is out of reach or an expensive city to live in. I think that I've been here 18 years and it's not been a noticeable difference. So you do your research and take a look. Food, transportation, housing, utilities. Let me know what you find. If you disagree, let me know. Or if you have any thoughts to add, please share them below. But that's what I discovered today. Living in Fort McMurray is not that expensive.